Do you know who takes important decisions in your school and who implements them effectively? Hello friends, look what these people are doing. Oh, they are being arrested by the police. Why do you think the police have arrested them? Yes, they have violated the rules and regulations of our constitution and so are being arrested by the police. What do you think? How are these rules and policies formed? Yes, the Government of India forms these rules and policies and issues them as orders signed by a number of important officials. On August 13, 1990, the Government of India issued an order which was called as an Office Memorandum. Like all government orders, it had a number and was signed by the Joint Secretary, an officer in the Department of Personnel and Training in the Ministry of Personnel, Public Grievances and Pensions. The order announced a major policy decision which said that 27% of the vacancies in civil posts and services under the Government of India are reserved for the socially and economically backward classes, SEBC, where SEBC signified the people who belong to castes that are considered backward by the government. The benefit of job reservation was till then available only to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. Now, a new third category called SEBC was introduced. Only persons who belonged to backward castes were eligible for this quota of 27% jobs and others could not compete for these jobs. What do you think? Could this have been the decision taken by the signing authority? No, that officer was merely implementing the instructions given by the Minister of Personnel, Public Grievances and Pensions, of which the department was a part. Such a major decision was taken by the important functionaries in our country. Do you recall the role of important functionaries such as the President and Prime Minister of our country? The President is the head of the state and is the highest formal authority in the country. Similarly, the Prime Minister is the head of the government and actually exercises all governmental powers and takes most of the decisions in the cabinet meetings and has the support of a majority of Lok Sabha members. The Government of India had appointed the Second Backward Classes Commission in 1979. It was headed by B.P. Mandel and so was popularly called the Mandel Commission. The commission was asked to determine the criteria to identify the socially and educationally backward classes in India and recommend steps to be taken for their advancement. The commission gave its report in 1980 and made many recommendations. One of these was that 27% of government jobs be reserved for the socially and economically backward classes. This report and recommendations were discussed in the Parliament. For several years, many parliamentarians and parties kept demanding the implementation of the Commission's recommendations. Then came the Lok Sabha Election of 1989. In its election manifesto, the Janata Dal promised that, if voted to power, it would implement the Mandel Commission report. For the next few months, this was the most hotly debated issue in the country. Newspapers and magazines were full of different views and opinions on this issue. It led to widespread protests and counter-protests, some of which were violent. Why do you think the people were against this memorandum? People reacted strongly because this decision affected thousands of job opportunities. But some also felt that existence of inequalities among people of different castes in India necessitated job reservations. Some felt this would give a fair opportunity to those communities who so far had not adequately been represented in government employment, while others felt that this was unfair as it would deny equality of opportunity to those who did not belong to backward communities. Who do you think should be approached to resolve such disputes? Yes, The Supreme Court and the High Courts in India should be approached to settle the disputes arising out of governmental decisions. Likewise, some people and associations who opposed to this order filed a number of cases in the courts. The Supreme Court of India bunched all these cases together and called this case as the Indira Sane and others versus Union of India case. 11 judges of the Supreme Court heard arguments of both sides. By a majority, the Supreme Court judges in 1992 declared that this order of the Government of India was valid. At the same time, the Supreme Court asked the government to modify its original order and said that the well-to-do persons among the backward classes should be excluded from getting the benefit of reservation. Accordingly, the Department of Personnel and Training issued another office memorandum on September 8, 1993. And the dispute thus came to an end, and this policy has been followed since then. In our previous example of office memorandum, we saw how Constitution worked for the implementation of the memorandum. The Prime Minister and the Cabinet takes all important policy decisions. The civil servants working together are responsible for taking steps to implement the minister's decisions, and the Supreme Court settles the disputes between citizens and the government. In a democracy, the government is responsible for ensuring security to the citizens and providing facilities for education and health to all. It collects taxes and spends the money thus raised on administration, defense, and development programs. It also formulates and implements several welfare schemes. To attend to all these tasks, several arrangements are made in all modern democracies. Such arrangements are called institutions. The Constitution of our country lays down basic rules on the powers and functions of each institution. These institutions involve rules and regulations which bind the hands of these leaders. They also involve meetings, committees, and routines that often leads to delays and complications. With these complications and delays, do you really think that these institutions are necessary? Yes, being a democratic nation, these institutions are very much necessary. Some of the delays and complications introduced by institutions are sometimes very useful, as they provide an opportunity for a wider set of people to be consulted in any decision. Though these institutions make it difficult to have a good decision taken very quickly, they also make it equally difficult to rush through a bad decision. That is why democratic governments insist on institutions. We have studied that the Parliament of India is the supreme legislative body in India, founded in 1919, which possesses legislative supremacy and thereby ultimate power over all political bodies in India. In all democracies, an assembly of elected representatives exercises supreme political authority on behalf of the people. In India, such a National Assembly of elected representatives is called Parliament, and at the state level, this is called Legislature or Legislative Assembly. From your knowledge, can you think of few reasons why Parliament is necessary? Parliament is necessary as it exercises political authority on behalf of the people in many ways, such as Parliament is the final authority for making laws in any country. This means it can make new laws, exchange existing laws, or abolish existing laws. It can exercise some control over those who run the government. This means those who run the government can take decisions only so long as they enjoy support of the Parliament. It controls all the money that the governments have, which means the public money can be spent only when the Parliament sanctions it. And Parliament is the highest forum of discussion and debate on public issues and national policy. It can seek information about any matter. The Parliament plays a central role in modern democracies. Most large countries divide the role and powers of the Parliament in two parts. They are called chambers or houses. Here, one house is usually directly elected by the people and exercises the real power on behalf of the people. The second house is usually elected indirectly and forms some special functions. The most common work for the second house is to look after the interests of various states, regions, or federal units. In our country, the parliament consists of two houses. The two houses are known as the Council of States or Rajya Sabha and the House of the People or Lok Sabha, and all laws made in the houses come into force only after they receive the assent of the President. Why do you think the final authority is given to the President? The President of India is a part of the Parliament, although he is not a member of either houses. That is why the assent of the President is taken to make it come to force. Our Constitution gives the Rajya Sabha some special powers over the states, but on most matters, the Lok Sabha exercises supreme power. Any ordinary law needs to be passed by both the houses, but if there is a difference between the two houses, the final decision is taken in a joint session in which members of both the houses sit together. The Lok Sabha exercises more powers in money matters. Once the Lok Sabha passes the budget of the government or any other money-related law, the Rajya Sabha cannot reject it. It can only delay it by 14 days or suggest changes in it, but this may or may not be accepted by the Lok Sabha. The Lok Sabha controls the Council of Ministers. Only a person who enjoys the support of the majority of the members in the Lok Sabha is appointed as the Prime Minister. And if the majority of the Lok Sabha members say they have no confidence in the Council of Ministers, all ministers, including the Prime Minister, have to quit. But the Rajya Sabha does not have this. Let us look at the lives of few common people. Oh, the government announced compensation money for flood-struck area. Where will I go to get that money? This officer will not help. How will I get my pension? We can't help you much. You need to contact the higher authorities. Whom do you think these people should approach? At different levels of any government, there are functionaries to take day-to-day decisions but not exercise supreme power on behalf of the people. These functionaries are collectively known as the executives. Why do you think we have executives? The executives are in charge of the execution of the policies of the government. Thus, when we talk about the government, we usually mean the executive. In a democratic country, there are two categories of the executive. One that is elected by the people for a specific period called the political executive. Political leaders who take the big decisions fall in this category. Second category is of people appointed on a long-term basis called the permanent executive or civil services. Persons working in civil services are called civil servants. Civil servant remains in office even when the ruling party changes and work under political executive and assist them in carrying out the day-to-day administration. Why is the minister more powerful than the civil servant? The minister is elected by the people and thus empowered to exercise the will of the people on their behalf. The minister takes the advice of experts on all technical matters. Being a parliamentary form of government, India has a separate head of state and a separate head of government. Who heads the two forms of government? The head of state is the President of India and the head of government is the Prime Minister. Prime Minister is the most important political institution in the country. Do you know how a Prime Minister is elected? The President invites the party or combination of parties that wins the majority of seats in the Lok Sabha to form the government. The leader of this party is appointed as the Prime Minister. After the appointment of the Prime Minister, the President appoints other ministers on the advice of the Prime Minister. Who are these ministers? These are Council of Ministers chosen by the Prime Minister from among the members of his or her party in the Parliament. The Council of Ministers has three categories of ministers: Cabinet Ministers, Ministers of State with independent charge, and ministers of state. The cabinet ministers are the top-level leaders of the ruling party. They take decisions and are the inner ring of the Council of Ministers, comprising of about 20 ministers. Ministers of state with independent charge are usually in charge of smaller ministries and participate in the cabinet meetings only when specially invited. Ministers of state are attached to and required to assist cabinet ministers. What do you think are the powers of the Prime Minister of India? As a head of the government, the Prime Minister has wide-ranging powers. He chairs cabinet meetings. He coordinates the work of different departments. His decisions are final in case disagreements arise between departments. He exercises general supervision of different ministries. All ministers work under his leadership. The Prime Minister distributes and redistributes work to the ministers. He also has the power to dismiss ministers. And when the Prime Minister quits, the entire ministry quits. Thus, if the Cabinet is the most powerful institution in India, within the Cabinet it is the Prime Minister who is the most powerful. But if the government is formed by an alliance of two or more political parties known as coalition government, the minister cannot take decisions as he likes. He has to heed to the views and positions of the coalition partners and other parties on whose support the survival of the government depends. We read that President is the head of the state. How is the President elected? All the members of Parliament, MPs, and members of legislative assemblies, MLAs, elect the President. What powers do the President have? All government activities, laws, and major policy take place in the name of the President. President appoints the Auditor General, Ambassadors of India, judges and Chief Justices of High Court and Supreme Court, etc. The President is the Supreme Commander of the Defence Forces of India. The President can declare war or sue for peace and conclude treaties with other countries. No bill can become a law without his approval and signature. The President can dissolve the Parliament on the advice of the Council of Ministers. The President appoints a Prime Minister who can muster majority support in the Lok Sabha. In such a case, the President can ask the Prime Minister to prove majority support in the Lok Sabha within a specified time. The Vice President of our country is the ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha. In the absence of the President of India, the Vice President officiates as the President.
There are numerous issues of crimes, disputes in the society. Any issue, whether it is female feticide or it is a river water dispute, there should be a system which decides the right and wrong in society. Whom do you think one should approach in case of any dispute? People approach the court in case of any dispute. Courts take decisions on large number of issues. According to the rule of law in our country, laws apply equally to all persons and certain set of fixed procedures need to be followed when a law is violated. To enforce this rule of law, we have a judicial system that consists of the mechanism of courts. The judicial system or judiciary performs the following tasks to enforce this rule of law. A mechanism for resolving disputes between citizens and the government, between two state governments, and between the centre and the state governments. As the final interpreter of the Constitution, the judiciary also has the power to strike down particular laws passed by the Parliament if it is believed that it is a violation of the basic structure of the Constitution. This is called judicial review. Every citizen of India can approach the Supreme Court or the High Court if they believe that their fundamental rights have been violated. The judiciary plays a crucial role in the functioning of India's democracy. It can play this role only because it is independent. Can you guess the meaning of an independent judiciary? Let us understand this with an example. In a particular situation, an ordinary person files a case against a rich politician. Suppose the politician has the power to appoint and dismiss a judge from the office. Do you think the judge would be able to take an independent decision? No. In such a situation, the judge may take the decision in favor of the politician. Thus, the Indian Constitution protects against this kind of situation by providing independence to the judiciary. Such independence is provided by separation of powers. This means that the other branches of the state, like the legislature and the executives, cannot interfere in the work of the judiciary. All the judges in the High Court as well as the Supreme Court are appointed with very little interference from the other branches of the government. It is also very difficult to remove a judge once appointed. The structure of the courts from the lower to the highest level resembles a pyramid. Can you guess the courts at the lowest level of the pyramid? There are several courts at the lower level. The courts that most people interact with are what are called subordinate or district courts. Each state is divided into districts that are presided over by a district judge. Each state has a high court, which is the highest court of that state. High courts were first established in the three presidency cities of Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras in 1862. At the top is the Supreme Court that is located in New Delhi and is presided over by the Chief Justice of India. The Supreme Court, which is located in Delhi, was established on 26 January 1950, the day India became a republic. The decisions made by the Supreme Court were binding on all other courts in India. A person can appeal to a higher court if they believe that the judgment passed by the lower court is not just. This can be understood well with the case State Delhi Administration versus Lakshman, Kumar and others, 1985. Sudha, the wife of Lakshman Kumar, died in the hospital due to burns. Sudha's family filed a case in the court. As per the evidence from the neighbors, it was proved that Lakshman and his mother and Lakshman's brother put Sudha into fire. Trial court convicted Lakshman, his mother and his brother and sentenced them to death. But the three accused stated that Sudha's sari had accidentally caught fire while she was heating milk and appealed in the High Court against this verdict of the trial court. After hearing arguments from both the lawyers, the High Court was convinced with Lakshman's statement and acquitted the accused. But Sudha's family, along with some women groups, appealed in the Supreme Court against the decision of the High Court. Finally, the Supreme Court found Lakshman and his mother guilty but acquitted Lakshman's brother. There are two different branches in the legal system. Sudha's case is a crime against society and is a violation of criminal law. The criminal law deals with conduct or acts that the law defines as offences. For example, theft, harassing a woman to bring more dowry, murder, etc. It usually begins with the lodging of a first information report (FIR) with the police who investigate the crime, after which a case is filed in the court. The civil law deals with any harm or injury to rights of individuals. For example, disputes relating to sale of land, purchase of goods, rent matters, divorce cases. A petition has to be filed before the relevant court by the affected party only. Legal procedures involve a lot of money and paperwork, as well as take up a lot of time which the poor cannot afford. Hence, the Supreme Court in the early 1980s devised a mechanism of public interest litigation, or PIL, to increase access to justice. It allowed any individual or organization to file a PIL in the High Court or the Supreme Court on behalf of those whose rights were being violated. The legal process was greatly simplified, and even a letter or telegram addressed to the Supreme Court or the High Court could be treated as a PIL. For the common person, access to courts is access to justice. The prolonged duration that courts take to hear a case is another issue in the Indian judicial system. However, in spite of these issues, the Indian judiciary has played a crucial role in success of Indian democracy.